In this second episode of Musical Coincidences, we'll explore how these connect to World War II, a musician's apartment, and even a musical TV show. I've gathered 3 new cases, although I must warn you that this episode has a slightly darker tone than the last one. Let's get started.
Daughter of the Bright Shadows. Abba was a Swedish pop group formed in Stockholm in 1972 by Agneta Falskog, Björn Ulvaeus, Benny Andersson, and Anni-Frid Lyngstad. Their name comes from the initials of each member. They gained worldwide fame after winning Eurovision in 1974 with Waterloo, and during the 70s and early 80s became one of the most famous groups in the world, thanks to hits like Dancing Queen, Mamma Mia, Fernando, and Take a Chance on Me. They were known for their catchy melodies, vocal harmonies, and influences from disco and Europop. They sold over 380 million records, becoming one of the best-selling groups in history. However, one particular event allowed this group to form as we know it. That event was World War II. Let's see how that happened. 37 years before the group was formed, in 1935, under the regime of the German man with a mustache, a paranoid plan was started to increase the births of pure children, if you know what I mean, aiming to ensure that the race would dominate the planet. This plan initially included the Germans themselves, but later, as the World War II progressed, they began recruiting women from conquered countries who met their standards, and forced them to reproduce with members of the regime party. As you can imagine, usually not voluntarily, going as far as sterilizing and ending the lives of those who did not meet these standards to prevent them from reproducing. The list of invaded countries exceeds a dozen, from Norway to even parts of France. The women from other countries who were forced to bear these children not only had to cope with that trauma, but were also rejected by their own people, making their lives impossible. The term you see on a screen, I put it there to avoid censor, was even coined. But additionally, many of these boys and girls were separated from their parents and given up for adoption to regime families or left in nurseries separated from their parents. After the occupation ended, many children never discovered who their true parents were. There were even cases where they were sent to psychiatric hospitals where they were severely mistreated. Faced with this scenario, many women from the occupied countries saw in any way to escape to other unoccupied countries, for example, in the case of the Norwegian, to Sweden. Anni-Frid Lyngstad was one of those children. Her mother escaped from Norway with her grandmother to protect her from that fate. Annie's mother, because of the difficult and scarce circumstances, was dazzled by a German sergeant named Alfred Haas. Her escape was successful, but unfortunately, she died at age 21 from kidney failure. Annie was only 2 years old, so she was raised by her grandmother. It was she who instilled in her a love for singing, as she used to sing her country songs to her. Annie took her first steps singing in primary school and continued until the worldwide recognition with Abba.
That regime's experiment lasted 12 years. Following the fall of the evil mustache, those responsible were tried for war crimes in a series of cases called the Russia trials. Russia is the acronym from the German for the Main Office for Race and Resettlement. Annie met her father for the first time after she was already famous. It appears it was her husband at the time who suggested she go with the process, which ultimately took place in Stockholm. The story was revealed by the German magazine Bravo in 1977.
Flatliner. Harry Nilsson was an American singer and songwriter who debuted in 1967 and achieved his greatest success during the 70s with his album Nilsson Schmelson. He had a number 1 on Billboard and won 2 Grammy Awards, one for the song Without You and another for Everybody's Talking, which was part of the cult movie Midnight Cowboy. During his successful period, he bought an apartment at 9 Curzon Square in the elegant Mayfair neighborhood of London. The apartment was ideal as it was near Apple Records, where the Beatles recorded, the Playboy Club, yes, that one from the Bunny magazine, and the Tramp nightclub. Since he spent more time in the United States than in London, he decided to rent out his apartment, which was mainly occupied by musician friends. On July 30th, 1974, someone entered the apartment to find a lifeless body. It was Cass Elliot, a singer famous mainly for being a member of the group The Mamas and the Papas, and later for her solo career with hits like Dream a Little Dream of Me. She moved into Nilsson's apartment for work reasons. Cass was touring the UK and had managed to have 2 weeks of sold-out shows at the iconic London Palladium. The day before, she had gone out with some friends, then returned to the apartment and went to bed. The next day, attempts to contact her failed, as she didn't answer any calls. Her assistant went to the apartment to find her gun in the bedroom. The cause was due to a heart failure believed to be related to the strict diets she followed to try to lose weight. She was only 32 years old. On September 7, 1978, another body was found lifeless in the same apartment. It was Keith Moon, the eccentric, while an innovative drummer known primarily for being a member of the band The Who. He and the band had just finished recording the album Who Are You? They even took this photo that would be part of the album cover. The day before, after attending a movie premiere, he accepted an invitation to dinner from Paul McCartney and his wife. He and his girlfriend returned to the apartment, where eventually Keith complained about being unable to sleep. So he took some prescribed pills, then ate some meat and eggs his girlfriend had prepared, and went to bed. The next morning, his girlfriend, who had fallen asleep in another room, went to wake him, only to find him unresponsive in bed. What ended his life was a pill overdose, ironically, pills to treat alcoholism. There were 26 pills in his stomach, while the medical instructions said not to ingest more than 3 per day. Keith was only 32 years old. Cass Elliot and Keith Moon both died while sleeping at age of 32 in the same room, in the same apartment, just 4 years apart.
Regarding the owner, a bit overwhelmed by the situation, he decided to sell the apartment to Pete Townshend, lead singer of The Who and a friend of Keith, before finally moving permanently to the United States. In Cass Elliott's case, some media outlets mistakenly reported that she had died from choking on a sandwich found in her room. This story was disproved by her own autopsy. As for Keith, the doctor who diagnosed him and prescribed treatment for his alcoholism gave him a bottle of 100 pills because he was unaware of the drummer's erratic behavior. One thing that caused some concern is that Keith appears on the cover of that last album he participated in, sitting on a chair that has the message, "Not to be taken away."
The kids aren't all right. Glee was a youth musical comedy series about a group of misfits who joined the unpopular choir group led by their Spanish teacher. Most of the main cast were young actors, gaining fame and high ratings with the series. However, there is a reason they are in this video. Episode 21 of Season 3 did not contain anything frightening within the episode itself, but what happened afterward, specifically from Season 5 onward, and even years after the series ended, make the episode seem, in retrospect, at least disturbing. The song they sang in that episode was "We Are the Champions" by Queen. Cory Monteith acted as Finn Hudson, the typical popular, athletic boy and cheerleader boyfriend, the role that gave him his great success as an actor. He starts singing the intro of the song in this episode, which says, "I pay my dues, time after time." This phrase means having made sacrifices, having suffered or gone through difficulties repeatedly to finally achieve a goal. Cory won at least 4 television awards between 2009 and 2011, including the Screen Actors Guild Awards and Teen Choice Awards, besides international recognition. On July 30th, 2013, Cory was found lifeless at the Fairmont Pacific Ring Hotel in Vancouver, Canada. He passed away due to a mixture of substances and alcohol. He was found entirely alone in his room. Although he struggled intermittently with addictions, ironically, it was his fame that gave him greater access to those vices, which even led to his character being removed from the series in season 4. Mark Salling played the typical bad boy of the group, rebellious, sarcastic, and arrogant, hiding inner insecurity. In the mentioned episode, he sings second and continues with the following verse: "I've done my sentence, but committed no crime," phrase which would be prophetic. On January 30th, 2017, Mark was found lifeless, hanging from a tree in a remote area, relatively close to his family home. Mark had been found guilty of possession of illegal material of minors, about 50,000 images. One of his ex-girlfriends reported him to the FBI. 36 days before sentencing, he was expected to serve 4 to 7 years in prison, as well as enter the National Registry of Offenders. After going through a severe process of depression and shame over the charges, he decided to take this decision. In Mark's case, there were 2 other episodes whose content, viewed in retrospect, are quite disturbing. In episode 12, season 3, they talk about how the group members see themselves in the future, and his character replies,
"In jail, or dead, or both.
Wherever you are,
Or both."
The other is episode 15 of season 2, where the ed teacher warns Mark's character that filming a naughty video with his girlfriend would be a crime since both are minors.
Making and owning tape could make you guilty of child.
By the time of Mark's departure, the series was no longer on the air. Naya Rivera played Santana Lopez. Besides being the Latino character, she was clever, stubborn, and competitive, starting as a recurring figure and then becoming a main character. She sang the 3rd verse of the song, which says, "And bad mistakes, I made a few." On July 8th, 2020, Naya decided to go swimming with her 4-year-old son at Lake Piru, California. They rented a boat and ventured into the lake. While swimming, the boat began drifting away without them, so Naya had to swim with her son to reach the boat, managing to get him on board. But she couldn't get on herself. The child was found asleep wearing a life jacket inside the boat. He told the investigators his mother had helped him onto the boat, and the last thing he saw was her raising one arm and shouting help before disappearing into the water. Her body was found floating adrift 5 days later. Naya was undoubtedly a heroic mother, but it's unknown why she did not put on the life jacket herself, a mistake that cost her life. Naya was 33 years old. The kids passed away in the same order as they sang in the episode, singing verses that were quite prophetic.
And that concludes this second episode of Musical Coincidences. I hope you liked the stories. This time it was a bit more death focused. I don't know how many episodes I can make of this series, as I haven't found many more that aren't super well known, or the bands mentioned are already very old, and I don't know if my small audience will know them. Although there were people who recognized the oldest band from the previous video, as we see in this comment from Catcher Sketch. There is at least a 3rd episode coming for now, but if you have any suggestions, you can write them in the comments. You can support by liking the video, you can share it, or if you want, you can subscribe to the channel, which helps a lot. There are more videos on the channel, from documentaries to events, and little by little, I will cover other topics of my interest. I'm Rash, and I'll see you in the next remental video.